Well, that has been a pain in the ass. It bolts into the original spring hangers. The issue I've got is I've got it pretty square, but it's they're just not lining up. The big issue is this bit here. Now, as for the front was actually a bit of a pain in the ass in order to be able to get the bolts in for the upper control arms, put the upper control arms back on. Well, today's the day. Finally get to bolt on some new parts to the EH. I've just put it up on the hoist. So I've taken it off the rotisserie, put it up on the hoist. And I've gone and got the K-frame, the front K-frame as well. Bolted that on, so it's ready to accept these new parts. Now, what are we looking at? An independent front end. Sorry, this is an independent rear end. The front end's over there. So yeah, this is the independent rear end. Now, remember I said that it bolts into the original spring hangers. So you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, literally got the EH up on the hoist. So I'm going to be doing that now. So we get given some instructions. So obviously the front and rear end are from V6 Conversions up in Moree. So we get instructions, and I've got to cut something out of the floor, but I don't really know where. So my plan is to at least, you know, chuck the rear end in and just sort of see where it goes, and it might make sense to me. But let's have a bit of a look at it. So it's using a VE diff. Here comes Rock. Yeah, so it's using a VE diff, and basically they've made all these, all the bracketry and that in order to bolt into the original spring hangers. And then we've got coilovers on both sides to be able to adjust. And by the looks of it as well, it looks like they've actually replaced the drive shafts. So they've replaced the CVs and that, and obviously all new bushes and that going through. I'll need to do the brakes. They've just, you know, cut the brake lines off, but that's okay. It's a 2-minute job anyway. So yeah, it's actually pretty cool. I really like it. I realise I now have to get a VE tail shaft. So yeah, get an in for a VE tail shaft, but that's either here nor there. So yeah, look, it's pretty cool. I'm keen to see it up and bolted in. I've just whacked on some scrap wheels from Myers Automotive. Thanks, Brenton. And then this pallet. So this is the front end. So I've also got a new brake booster there, which I'll show later on. But yeah, so this has already got the engine mounts ready to go for the VP engine that's going to go in. The only thing I need to do is, it doesn't come with the stub axles, so I've actually got to use the stub axles. That's why I bought the VR. I've got to use the VR stub axles in order to finish that off, in order to put wheels and that on it. So that's really the only thing that it doesn't come with. But yeah, everything else is pretty cool. So I've chucked the EH up on the hoist, so off the rotisserie, bolted up the K-frame, which was quite nice that it all went in. So I haven't warped the chassis at all yet. So that's a good start. So yeah, I think I'll put this camera down and we'll bolt everything up and see if it all fits. the issue I've got is I've got it pretty square, but it's they're just not lining up. So I think what I'm going to do, it's not far out, so I'm going to try and lever it in. It's probably out by about, I don't know, 5 mil. But every time I position it, every time I move it and position it, it just seems to be, you know, not quite the same, not quite right. So anyway, I guess I was never under the impression it was just going to bolt straight in, because that'd be just too easy. But anyway, we'll keep working at it. But I thought I'd just give you a little update of why you're messing around, is because the front left, so the passenger side, is just not lining up. So anyway, I'll jump underneath it and we'll see if we can't get it sorted out. All right, it sort of beat me, but sort of not. I don't know, it's hard to explain. So what happened was, the brackets going into the front spring hanger, they're out by 5 mil. So I measured what the old one is, and it was, say, 340. I think it was 940. The gap between the inside of the spring hanger on both sides is 935, and the gap between the bushes on the new one is 930. So 930, 935 is what we need to get it into. We're out by 5 mil. Now, part of that could be, I don't know, it's just differences in the chassis and everything like that. Obviously, they make these on a jig. There could be all these sorts of differences in chassis and everything like that. Anyway, so I managed to just knock out the spring hangers a bit. Just, you know, knock them, because I'm only got to find 2.5 mil each side. So I've managed to now at least get the bushes started in there, but obviously I can't put it in there fully yet because I haven't cut the floor, and I didn't know where to cut the floor. Now that it's sort of half sitting in there, I can now see we've got to cut the floor. So that's going to be tomorrow's job, is I'll cut the floor. This section here, so that's the section that comes with it. I didn't quite know where it was going to go, but effectively it's got to go along here. It's got to go, yeah, basically there. But now the other issue is in the sedans, I don't believe they have this crossbar. Now this crossbar is actually spot welded to the wheel arches. Now I don't think that's going to go under there. I've got to trim off little bits and pieces there to get it under there, but I don't believe it's going to get under there. Anyway, there's going to be a bit of work to do tomorrow. I'm going to take this rear end back out. I now know where to cut, so I'll make that cut and at least sort of just tack it in there, and then attempt to put the rear end in it fully and bolt it up. The front end should be fairly straightforward. I found some old washers, which I'll get some new ones, probably from Rare Spares or something, but they're not too bad. That should just bolt straight in. Like, I'm really not worried too much about that one. Obviously I can't do anything with it because I've got no stub axles or anything like that, and I don't want to rip off the stub axles of that until I'm ready to strip it down completely. But for nothing else, I'll be able to bolt that in as well. So that's going to be the job for tomorrow. Yeah, pull this out, cut the floor, and then we should be able to bolt it in. All right, back at it. I've now got to cut out a piece of this floor. So now that I've put sort of dummy fitted the rear end in there, I can work out exactly where the floor is going to be cut. So now I've sort of dummy fitted it up, so basically you can see it there. Now I've had to cut that rail out, which fortunately it's actually, they're a slot-in rail anyway, because there was only a couple of spot welds on either side, so I was able to just cut that out, and I've just retained that over there, so I'll deal with that later. But effectively the plate that's supplied is obviously a bit oversized, but you can see that little slot there obviously sits in, that's where the original fuel tank goes. So that slot's in there. Then that little groove goes up into there, and that. I sort of chopped it off a little bit just to sort of get it to clear in there, but and then I had to measure 600mm from there to there, which I've done. So I know that that is basically the right spot. So what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do, or the first thing I did, is I actually just tacked in just a piece of bar here. Now, so chances are that the back of these chassis rails won't twist and turn anyway, but it's always just to be better safe than sorry before I go and cut any steel out. So the plan is to cut out, definitely cut out this part here. So what I've done is I've just marked out where I'm going to cut. Now I'm not going to go too far. If I look at the instructions, so the instructions sort of look at there's a hole there which I think is for some wiring or something to do with the fuel tank or something. It looks like this piece is actually this side of it, so for nothing else I'm going to keep it at that line there. Now there's a little hump, it goes up, so I'm basically going to do it at the bottom of that. I'll cut that out, and then sort of I can then trim this top piece to sort of fit, so I can actually do like a butt weld on there. But I basically don't want to cut too much out first. I just want to cut enough out to make sure it all clears. The idea is that the most, I don't want to cut out as much of the original material as possible. I just want to leave as much of it in there as possible, and then I can just trim this replacement piece to suit. So I'll make those cuts and then we'll see what we have. That's been interesting. The floor cutout was good. It's been really tight to actually get in the front mounts. So I actually had to get a ratchet strap out and just bolt it to the front and jam it in, but we got it in there. But there's still more cutting to go. So as you can see here, the rears won't line up yet because I've got scrubbing wheels, so I've got to actually take a little bit of the inside wheel guards off. But the big issue is this bit here. Now the piece that they sent me was basically just cut that out and she'll be right sort of thing, but that is scrubbing on that, and that will not go into that back, it will not go into that back arm because that's rubbing on there. So I mean, I'm going to take all this out anyway. I'm going to cut all this out anyway because I'm going to put like a fuel tank. I've got to put a fuel tank in that in here yet. But yeah, that's just one thing to note, is that the template still, yeah, if you cut it out to the template, it still fouls on that arm there. But in terms of gap, you know, it's a good gap, so that's all you need to have in there. At the top there, I'm glad I didn't take too much more out of that because that just didn't need it. So that's got plenty of clearance through there. And then yeah, I'm probably gonna have to take a little bit off that piece over there just to make sure that when this comes up that it doesn't foul on that. But aside from that, you can hear the, so that's the tyre rubbing on the inside of the guard. But I mean, it's not fully in there yet, but sorry about the light. But yeah, it's that'll look pretty cool. Obviously not with them wheels. Those wheels are pretty ugly, but yeah, so still a little bit more to go, but at least it's sort of in there. I can actually see what's going on now, so a little bit more cutting, and then hopefully we can get that all bolted up and sitting in there nicely. Alright, so I thought I'd finish the day with just bolting up the front end as well, but as I've gone to bolt it up, the upper control arms were fouling, so I'm just taking these off now, and then it should be able to slot into place, and then I can put it back on, put the control arms back on when I bolt it up in there. So yeah, I'll just take these off now, and then hopefully that'll bolt into place, and then we've got something finished for the day. Well, that has been a pain in the ass, but they're in, or they're sort of, you know, sort of in. So the rear is, the only thing I've got to do is, obviously I haven't put the rear bushings in there, but I've just got a bolt in there just so I can lift it up and do my thing. But effectively, yeah, the rear is in. Now, in the end, so the piece that I got, so this piece here, right, is probably good if you're trying to retain the factory floor and whatnot, but because I'm putting in, you know, another fuel tank, I end up just cutting the whole floor out. That way I can see precisely where the clearances are. Now, as you can see over here, I've probably got a little bit more to cut out on that, but I'll tidy all those cuts up and that whatnot. And then what I'll do is I'll end up just making a piece to go down there. Then I'll probably run some bars along here. Once I get a fuel tank, I've got to work out what fuel tank I'm going to get yet. But yeah, that's in. So yeah, that's the clearances. And the other thing that I had to do is trim a bit of that guard away, that inner guard, because it was just scrubbing. Now I'll tidy that up once it's all disassembled again and that. And I'll probably have to play with offsets on the wheels and whatnot, but yeah, they're tucked in quite nice there. Now, as for the front was actually a bit of a pain in the ass. For no other reason than where the top bolts go through, so where these top bolts go through, the other side of it, so where you need to put the nut in, the holes don't line up. So if I get underneath, so you got these holes here, right? They're the holes that you need for to put a nut on. They don't actually line up, so it's hard to sort of show, but yeah, they don't line up. And so what it meant is that the back ones, I had to put the nut in with a pair of needle nose pliers and then try and start the bolt. The fronts, I could get in there with a socket, but you're sort of holding the nut captive in the socket and everything like that. All they probably needed to do was weld some nuts in that inner section, because that's all box section that they would have had open anyway. If they welded some nuts in there, you could then just, anyway. That's just a piece of engineering, I guess, or a piece of engineering suggestion that I would say for V6 conversions. But yeah, that was like, that took me half an hour to do 2 bolts. So it was just a pain in the ass. But anyway, it's in there now. What else did I have? Oh yeah, I had to take the upper control arms off first in order for it to sit up in there, and then if you're installing one of these, just start the nuts, those top 4 bolts, just start them, because then you need to position that whole frame, or that whole subframe, in order to be able to get the bolts in for the upper control arms, put the upper control arms back on. So it was a bit of a process, but I got there in the end. And obviously it doesn't come with instructions or anything like that, so it's all just trial and error. So anyway, it's in now. That's about all I'm going to do for this video. Next video, I'm going to start bolting up the engine. So my plan is, now that I've got the front and rear end, my plan's now to bolt the engine and the gearbox in with the cross member and whatnot. And then just do up a dummy loom just to get it fired. And then once I've got everything all plumbed and I know where everything's meant to go, then I can disassemble it all again and keep going on the bodywork. But yeah, so the next video will be the engine, and yeah, we'll see how many how many episodes that one takes. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, and don't forget, if you're liking this content, just like and subscribe. Obviously with the build series, you know, there's a number of videos are coming out and will be coming out. So obviously turn your notifications on if you're wanting to keep up to date with what's going on in the build. Obviously I don't work on this full time. I'm only working on this, you know, during the weekends and during the week and whatnot. So yeah, just stay patient with me. I'll get content out as soon as I have new things to do and new things to show you. But yeah, that's pretty exciting to get those two things bolted in there now. So anyway, cheers guys, see you next time.